Welcome to another episode of Become an Industry Celebrity. I am so excited today. I'm excited every day, but I'm super excited today because we have my good friend and coach Tomasha here on the show. So I want to kick it off saying, Tomasha, tell us who you are for those who don't know you.
Yes, well, hello everyone. My name is Tomasha Super, and I am a leadership development coach. So I primarily work with small businesses, helping them to figure out how do you build leaders and profitable companies during chaotic times, and then also during times when you are just trying to elevate, grow, and expand the business.
Woo! Hard, challenging times and expansion both are going to be interesting periods, whether you are weathering the storm or expanding has its growing pains. So I definitely want to get into that. But leadership, everyone says leadership and leadership coaching. If there's so many leaders in the world, why do we have a lack of that? You know what I'm saying, Tomasha? What's going on with this?
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest thing is that leadership actually really is like, it's not taught in a way, in an actionable way. I think we have so much didactic curriculum around what leadership is and the definition of it and what it can be and what it can do, but not how you can be and exude it, right? It's something that most of the time, especially in the corporate realm, you have to learn that. When you become a supervisor, you still don't even really get taught leadership, right? You're taught how to micromanage, but really exuding and exemplifying what a leader is, developing that level of intelligence with yourself, also that level of emotional intelligence, communication, all of those things, that stuff really isn't taught, right? And if it is taught, it's real quick and you only got a little bit of time to catch up with it. The focus is so much more on the management of things and people and not necessarily the influence and leadership of visionaries, of teams, and of strategy.
That is so important. And for those who don't know, before she became this amazing coach that is so beloved into the entrepreneurial space, you've actually did leadership and you were a leader in a highly regulated field. So you say this as someone who's been in corporate, so you know both the spectrums of corporate and entrepreneurship. So can you talk more about how you develop your own leadership style over time?
Oh man, I tell you what, I think the main way I developed my own leadership style is through failure, through mistakes. A lot of it was developed, though, I'll be honest with you, by being like the right hand and right under those leaders who I got to see not just what they would put out there to people and what they would display, but actually the things that they would do, right? And the way by which they would influence people around them, the things that they would do when no one was watching, no one was following. Those secret meetings behind closed doors that we're always like, where's the manager going? Where's the director going? Being able to attend some of those things, not just as the leader, but then also the person who was the right hand or the manager over years really gave me the opportunity to not only learn and see the behaviors that go into it, but then also to get on the other side and actually display some of them. So I learned a lot about what doesn't work, right? I learned a lot about what can work, but might be controversial. But then most importantly, I learned the fact that everyone has a different leadership style and we cannot try to force and push people into one or the other because they never perform at their best, ever, right? And so that was probably the biggest one thing that I learned.
Oops. Can you hear me? I'm sorry about that. I don't know what's going on. This is about to be a really good episode. I can already. Okay. Anyways, so can you hear me? Make sure we're good. Yeah, I don't know why I can't. Oh, now you're muted. There we go. Sorry, guys. This is live. If you haven't never done live production, then you don't know what it is. And I guess it went quiet at the right moment because I asked, if we know there's individual leadership styles, why is it so hard for people to find their own style and own their own self as a leader? Why do they become leaders and then lose themselves?
Oh, you know what? I think it's primarily because most companies and businesses are so focused, and not to say that it's wrong, right? Let me just put that out there. But a lot of companies and organizations, they're so focused on their own mission and their own desires, and they in their minds, right, and in their teams and their direct board of directors, things that they figured out exactly what they want you to do. And so everything's catered towards what do we want them to do. I'm going to teach them just enough or what they need to know to do what we need them to do. They're not necessarily in a position to, most of the time, financially and or time wise, to commit to really fully developing a sense of individual intelligence and leadership amongst the people that work for them, right? It's why you have so many people at supervisory levels or the levels where maybe higher management doesn't see them, but they really have no clue as to where the skill set really lies with those people, right? A lot of times you have more problems or more complaints with lower level supervisors than you would the higher level leadership, is because a lot of times it doesn't trickle down enough. They're not investing the leadership development, the time, the energy, the resources, even at the basic in the very foundational levels of what I would consider to be leadership. And I call that micro leaders.
Micros and macro. It's a lot of micromanagers too. We talk about that, not even leaders. But something you talk about is legacy building and legacy leadership. And so, can you describe what's possible? Because we're like, okay, that sounds great, but how do I actually keep rising to the top and love my life and not have to sacrifice my family, my ambitions, and my integrity to be a leader? Like, where have you seen this leadership legacy like actually like manifest itself, whether it's clients or for you?
Yeah, so I mean, I think for me, definitely working with leaders of in what they would call the small business world, but they're just, not necessarily corporate entities. I mean, even in corporate, one thing that I realize in the leaders that I work with is a lot of times you're so busy leading someone else's initiatives that you forget about your life as an initiative, the initiative that you have personally that you're going after. And so I really teach them and try to get them to understand that you have to marry both, right? That's why you find so many people in higher level positions. They excel at their job, but they're not fulfilled at home. And then you wonder why the performance isn't the best all the way around. Just because we're highly skilled doesn't mean that we're highly satisfied. And I think for some reason, people have put those two things together. I know a lot of highly skilled people, a lot of highly educated people that have really great jobs, really great titles, but they are not fulfilled personally. And I think that is where, when you start really working on that, building that, and getting people to think outside of just the skills that they're using, but also looking at how is that also able to apply over to my life, and how can I take some of these things that I've learned and apply it personally and marry those two instead of always keeping them separate. You'll find higher performance in jobs. You'll find better attitudes, interpersonal relationships. People are better able to communicate their needs and not just the needs of the organization or the company or your boss, right? There's so many layers to it, Deidre.
Oh my God. And so I know you always, if you all don't follow Tomasha on Instagram, you need to do yourself a favor and your team a favor and listen to her and follow her on Instagram. And I say that because you share so many gems and you snatch so many edges and you just inspire so many lives. And I mean, you told a story the other day, and I say this because leadership is in the organization, it's in the community, it's at home. Mm-hmm. But you talked about this lady, I guess a waitress or service worker or someone and like, can you tell that story or just tell the audience of like how your leadership style can impact people anywhere and everywhere?
Yeah, I think for me, when it comes to what I do, right, I always feel like, and I think some of it is attributed to my grandfather, because he would always say, like, you never know who you might meet, right? And so we were always raised and taught to, be open to whoever you meet, you might change their life, right? And so for me, I talk to everybody, or at least I'm nice and, approachable. I try to be for most people. And so I was out at this restaurant getting some breakfast. I was by myself. It's something that I do. And this lady walks up to me. She was actually another waitress. She wasn't my waitress. And she says, "Oh my gosh, hi, Tomasha, how are you?" And you meet somebody and you're like, oh, she knows me, but I have no idea who this person is. And you're trying, how you're trying to figure out, I'm not the only one. So please, y'all don't judge me. But you try to figure out, who is this person? Like, I know she knows me. Clearly, I've seen her before. And I just couldn't figure it out. And she says, I think she could tell after a few minutes, because I was kind of like, what do I do? And she said, you know what? You met me like 3 or 4 years ago. and I was working in a restaurant. She was like, and you worked at that job. I think I worked there maybe like a year and a half, 2 years. And I was like, oh, yeah, like it clicked right away. I said, oh my God, how are you doing? How are your kids? Like it's been a few years. And so we're talking, and she said, I really just want you, I'm fast forwarding. She said, I really want you to understand something why I came over. She was like, you changed the way that I looked at myself in my career and what I do. She said, for so long, I felt like just being a server or a waitress was like this very low level bad thing. And I never really felt like I was doing like myself justice, like it would be enough for me or my kids if I felt like I wasn't doing enough. And she absolutely loves what she does. And so fast track to now, since when I used to talk to her and I would just have conversations with her. I mean, I'm just eating a sandwich or something, or fries maybe back in the day. And she said now that she's actually thinking about starting like an online program, because she's been watching me on Instagram. Sometimes when I'm on there, I'm thinking about starting an online course. She doesn't know how she's going to get started, but she's been thinking about it, on how she can teach people how to be better waitresses. And I'm thinking to myself, number one, we all need that. How many of us have had a bad waitress experience? And you're just like, where is the training here, right? I mean, I think Chick-fil-A is the only people really getting it right every single time. So, but she said to me, she was like, you know what? I'm thinking about creating something like that. And I just want you to know, I would have never even thought that I could do something like that. Right? I would have never thought that I could actually do something like this. Me being a waitress, have that type of impact and see myself as someone who could be teaching someone else. Right? And so how does that apply to leadership? Leadership is more about influence of people in their thoughts and their actions. It's more about that than it is managing their ability to do a task. It's more about that than managing their desire, ability to follow directions. I was able to mentally influence her to consider an alternative route or a way of doing something, living her life, whatever. Have her to go and discover that there's something more, and now she's taking action on that. Proper leadership, if done well, can lead to that same thing with team members. And proper leadership is a lot easier sometimes than micromanaging, right? If you have enough leadership and it's developed properly, you can guide, right? And lead them in a way, influence them to make a decision to do what you want them to do on their own, versus you forcing and pushing and dictating every step of the way.
Can we get an amen right there? Like that right there. It's just so profound, because I think a lot of us grow up seeing, oh, I have to be this way to be a leader. And it's like, really, it's about the character and how you motivate, inspire, and, hopefully motivate people to do their jobs and want to do their jobs. But that's part of the thing. And something else you talked about, and I want to, eventually get into some mistakes people make, but something that you do that I really enjoy in the entrepreneurship online space. A lot of people have their receipts they show. I got this much money. And I say that because that does inspire some people, but you always talk about legacy leadership, like what outside of that. And something that you said that was so profound to me, because I think a lot of us leaders think I need to be number one's in a mindset. But you said, I have clients who do better than me, like financially better than me. And that's fine, because they're doing things their way. And us as leaders need to not be intimidated by our teammates or our clients, whoever are doing better. And can we talk about that dynamic? Like, leadership is not always being at the top, but is really being that inspirational leader to motivate people to do their best.
Yeah, I mean, so I've definitely had my fair share of bad leaders, and as I came up through corporate, right, like people that were over me. I have one or two in particular that like I probably will never ever forget, and they know who they are, right? But I think that on that side of it, it's more of, I don't necessarily need to be up front to lead, and I think a lot of people need to understand that leadership happens from the back of the room. It happens from the second that you decide that you're going to take ownership and you're going to move forward and you're going to influence and you're going to guide and you're going to permeate the space, room, environment, whatever it is that you're doing that you're in. You're going to take control there. You're going to be heard. You're going to be seen, right? And you're going to make definitive decisions that cause change and impact. And I think a lot of people see leadership as a position. It's not a position. It's a mindset. I don't need to have a certain title to be a leader. I don't need to be at a certain pay grade to be a leader. And this is something that I thought about myself even when I was only making $10 an hour. You know what I mean? When I was making less than that, right? I always saw myself as I am a leader. I was a leader in sports. I was a leader academically. I was a leader at most of my jobs. And while I may have become a supervisor or a manager, and in some environments I never did become that, right? I always saw myself as I'm a leader. I'm going to be one of the first people to step up to volunteer. I'm going to be one of the first people to do it right the first time. I'm going to be the person to say I messed up, even when I probably could have lied and said I didn't. Leadership isn't by position or by title or by rank. It is a mindset. It is a decision. And I think that's where people get caught up in the, oh, if my clients make more money than me, or if my team has more skill than me, what does that mean? What does that mean about me? It means absolutely nothing. Number one, for me, it means that I know how to hire correctly, right? I mean, why would I want to hire people that don't know more than me on my team? It just makes absolutely no sense. And then also, too, I want people to be around me that know more because I can let them run with it. I think a lot of times people want to be a leader, but they won't allow themselves to lead. They're not prepared to do that. Do you want to be a manager? And I've met some people who realize that after working with me. You want to be a manager, and that's okay. You want to be a task rabbit. That's okay. Not every single person is meant to lead people and others. And the real problem is it's because they really haven't learned how to really properly lead themselves.
And then we can go a lot of different ways there because I on all levels, I resonate with your words and your encouragement.
Mm-hmm.
So for those out there who are like, hey, I want to make it to the C-suite. I want to do, and especially those of all backgrounds, but those who are like, who have some glass ceilings or things, whether it's because their age or what they look like or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What advice do you have to tell them that they're probably not getting the real talk they're getting in their office place? Like, what do they really need? If they have 3 top things to focus on to really accelerate to get in the C-suite in corporate, what should they be focusing on now?
Yeah, I think that they need to take ownership of their development. And I think a lot of times, especially in the corporate realm, we rely on corporate to develop us so much, right? We wait on that specific class to open up. We wait on our manager to validate us. We wait on someone to see our skill. Develop yourself. Take ownership of that thing that you've been doing. It's interesting to me that when people leave, college, they get their degrees, you have all of the ownership there, right? I'm doing my work, I'm getting my grades, and I get this degree. And then you come to corporate, and it's almost as if you just let your future, your skill set, and where you're going fall to a whim, and this company's just going to be your ride. So, number one, take ownership of your skill, take ownership of your development. Number two, I really wish that people would learn how to communicate with everybody. And when I say everybody, I mean I would talk and have conversations with everybody, right? Don't be intimidated by someone's title or what people perceive them to be. Get comfortable talking to people in the C suite. If you want to be in the C suite, you need to talk to people and get comfortable with the C suite. Most often, we want something that we're not even willing to go and get inside of. So you want to be a C-suite person, but you're afraid to go and have a conversation with them that's standing in the hallway. They walked past your desk and you didn't even look up and say hello, right? We have to start conquering those fears and those discomforts right away. And then I would say the third thing would be is to really make sure that you are crystal clear on the types of relationships that you are building. Relationships are key, whether people want to believe it or not. And it's not just even when it comes to business relationships, like who can help you up the ladder. But I'm also talking about your personal relationships that are the people that are going to help you when you're crying every day when you get off that ladder. How many of us have taken a promotion, right, corporately, or rather it is, even if you're in business, you work for a small business, you take a promotion, you take on more opportunity. And then at night when you go home, you're so stressed. You love your job, but you're so stressed. Don't forget to take care of those relationships with the people who are supporting you behind the scenes, right? The people who are supporting you, whether or not you did good on that project, whether or not you got that promotion, whether or not your team excelled at every metric they set for you. Don't forget those relationships. So those would be my top 3.
And those Good top three. And Jamar said, Tamasha's out here preaching, honey. You know Jamar. We know Jamar. She is out here preaching. I guess on the flip side for the entrepreneurs, and I'm thinking those who at least are outsourcing or have a team, like what would you think they should be focusing on as they're becoming, well, they're leaders now because they're their company, but they might have not been that leader in corporate or before. So how do they prepare? What should they focus on?
Oh, yeah. So for entrepreneurs, I would say not even thinking about continuing to develop who you are, but actually owning your expertise. I think for a lot of us that have come out of the corporate world, like me and you both can agree, when you work, in corporately or even just going to school, we are taught that we are learning something to give to someone else. Right? Think about it. We are taught that we are learning something to serve someone else. And it's a very different mindset and perspective that you are learning and being taught something to serve yourself, to serve your business, right? And we look for things that are going to serve other people. So really start thinking about, how do I own the fact that I'm going to be serving myself with this? Right? Number two is I want people to really start thinking about, how do you create safety in your business and in your entrepreneurial journey, whether you have a business that generates multiple six figures or between 7 and 8, right? Really stand and think, how do I own that expertise? Because secondly, the first thing is own expertise. When you start to own that, when you leave corporate, the number one thing that I see people battle with is that a lot of times we love corporate because it gives us safety. Right? We love the safetiness in that paycheck that comes every 2 weeks, every month, every week, whatever that looks like for you, and those bonuses. Well, when you leave corporate, you become the safety. You're no longer looking for safety outside of yourself, right? You know what I mean? There is no one giving you that annual raise. There is no one cheering you on along the way except for your family. And so how can you create those tangible points of safety in your business, in your strategy, in your vision, things like that? And then most importantly, I always tell people, when you're an entrepreneur, be okay doing something that has yet to be done. So many of us are experts in our own right. And when we were working for other people, when you're working in these departments, you would have ideas, you would have things and strategies that would come up to you that you know would work, that you know would serve that organization. However, they would always overlook you, and or they already had an alternative option and made a decision to go in a different route. Now that you own your own business, now that you are the visionary, the leader, the CEO of something that is much bigger than yourself, I want you to make sure that you don't look over yourself the same way that you were upset that others would do. Don't overlook your own ideas and actually execute on those things. Otherwise, you might as well be back in corporate.
You might as well. I mean, that is so beautiful. And I like the different perspectives for, corporate versus entrepreneur. It's great. And David, he gave me my first consulting apprenticeship. It wasn't even a job, but that's how I dabbled into entrepreneurship. So David, he said, owning your expertise. I like that. Yeah, I told you, Tomasha, off the chain, everything she says is solid gold because it's so true. And literally William just says so true. It's so true. So talk about some things. Let's also define success. And I think it's really important to talk about that, something that I like to talk about with my clients. But part of the things when we talk about client wins, why do I bring this up? Because she really talks about interesting things that clients have, whether it is having more time for their family, having more time for how have people redefine success after working with you? And I say that because I know when I came to you, I was like, I want X, Y, and Z. And then I came out hold up, wait a minute, maybe I want something different. So how have you seen success change when people start thinking about legacy leadership?
Oh yeah, I think the biggest definition of success a lot of people use, because it's an easy metric, is money. It's revenue. It is how much did we make this year compared to last year? How much are we forecasted to make for the rest of the year over the next 2 years? And I always tell people that's easy to do. The biggest change that we can see is I want you to give your life, your desires, and the things that you wanted to do as an individual professional and or as an individual person, man or woman. I want you to give those things the same amount of metrics for you to measure to see where you are, right? Because if we're only looking at money, we'll end up with a pot full of money and a little of life, right? And time's something we can't get back, right? And so a lot of times people aren't really clear on what they expect out of their life, but they're crystal clear on what they expect out of a career. They're clear on what they expect someone else to do for them. But what are you going to do for you? Right? We have higher expectations of other people than we do of our own selves as it relates to our own life. And so I think that is the biggest thing that I get people to really see is like, yes, I definitely can help you in your business determine how can we increase and scale your revenue model? How can we find different modalities and methods of bringing in extra money, right? But that's where legacy begins, is if you can get really clear on what are we doing here beyond just bringing in a bunch of money? How are we impacting and creating something that's long lasting beyond just making money, right? What's going to happen beyond me? Why do we have so many family businesses with, so many children that are hungry to take over the leadership of them? But when mom or dad passes away or they get sick, the business fails because we weren't crystal clear as to what we were doing from the beginning, right? We weren't crystal
Mm-hmm.
clear as to what the succession plan was going to be from the beginning. We didn't know what our initiative was, right? And so I think that really making sure that we are just as crystal clear with our personal legacy in our lives and our skill sets as we are with other people's. That's going to be the biggest game changer that I see with clients.
Mm. Yeah, so beautiful. And I know this is a personal branding show, so I want to talk about your personal brand. And I say this because y'all probably see my face all the time. I
Mm.
like being on video. I like doing this. Tamasha, you might not see her for a couple of weeks, because she's a different branding style. But her branding style works for her. She sells out events. She gets clients. And I say that because tell me more about your personal brand strategy, and how you decided I don't really want to be that visual or be out there, but you're continually getting an influx of clients and opportunities. So
Yeah.
what's your personal brand strategy?
Yeah. I mean, my personal brand strategy, number one, is I always want to be the leadership development person or the person that people look to as far as business development. I wanted to be someone that people would be comfortable approaching. So I wear t-shirts a lot of the time. Now, can I get dressed up and wear a suit? Absolutely. Will you see me in heels? Maybe. But a lot of times you'll see me in like a nice blouse, a nice shirt, right? I want it to be approachable. That's a part of my brand. I think we have enough people looking really stiff and tight and a little bit like, just not always approachable. And I think that the business realm needs people, like they need someone that makes people feel like, okay, you know what? I'm not the only one that feels like I don't want to wear a suit every day to work, or I don't necessarily want to feel really tight, like I got to have on, heels every single day. So my personal brand is really to make sure that no matter at what level in business you are, whether you are in corporate or you're an entrepreneur, that I want people to embrace what it is exactly that they want, how you want to be perceived. And so that's why I'm comfortable and I'm me, I can definitely dress up. I have my days, right? But then another part of my personal brand too is to make sure that the things that seem complex, that we always talk about in big words and big numbers corporately, that we can do them on a very basic level, a level that most people can understand and we can just have a conversation. I like to do exactly what we're doing right here. And I think too oftentimes we have people talking at us, mentors talking down to us, people talking over us instead of talking with us. So my brand is very much let's talk with one another. Let's build with one another, a very collaborative effort. But the main part that most people know me for is the fact that like I'm very much okay with kind of being, behind the scenes. I don't necessarily need to, in the beginning, didn't need to have a flashy website. I mean, we're working on that now. So, things will change in a few months. It'll be live. So we will have that flashy website and all that stuff. But for me, I'm really big on let's do the work. Let's impact lives. And so I don't necessarily need, to have a whole team following me around with cameras and all those different things and be on social media all the time or be like living inside of LinkedIn hoping that someone finds me. I think that my brand has been built on Tomasha can get the results and people refer people to me all the time that don't have a lot of questions. They're just like, hey, I'm not really asking you, can you do this? Tell me what you can do for us and I'm ready to roll. And I think that speaks a lot to my skill set. It speaks a lot to me owning my expertise. But most importantly, I know exactly where I'm going and I'm really clear on that. And I also don't, what do you call it? You always tell me I don't sacrifice
Yeah.
my lifestyle, right? For the sake of making a living. A lot of times people will sacrifice their life and or their lifestyle for the sake of making a living. And that's a huge part of my brand.
That is a big, and then attorney Quan Bridges said balancing money and family and stuff. It really is. It's that's why we gotta be realistic about it and like prioritize the right things because you can always get more money. We can't get more family when they're gone.
Yeah.
They're gone. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
that is the realest thing. And it's just that's something I really learned. And I would say another thing about it, like you have reputation. Whenever I see that Tomasha goes live, I watch like you. It's like, and I say this because I don't go live, and this is on Instagram. I don't go live that often on there. That's just not. Or if I do, like it's not like the whole Tomasha effect where it's like she's gone live. I'm like pinging friends like she's gone live. Don't catch her. And every time you deliver, I call it a sermon. I think it's more you just talking, or you said I'm having a talk. I'm like, no, this is a TED talk. If it's going to be a talk, it's Tomasha talk actually. So when did you start doing that, and how did you get this reputation of like you live talking the truth to us?
Oh man, I think what it is I think like back in 2017 or 2018, I started doing a lot of lives on like Facebook, and this is when I was still working in corporate, and I just started talking in general just about business and the things that I would see going on, whether it was, something small business related or corporate business related, and the things that I felt like people were missing out on, opportunities for growth and development. And so I started there. I've always been really naturally drawn to video. So like writing things out or writing a bunch of captions and always having to write certain things is not necessarily something I love to do. But video, I love having a conversation. Like this to me is like conversation, whether I can see you or not. And so I think people really enjoyed the realness. That's where my reputation really started to deliver. I didn't try to hide or be overly politically correct, because I think that's a part of the problem as well, is that we don't want to tell each other the truth. Everyone's afraid of saying exactly what's going on and exactly how it's happening. And I think that leaves all of us at a place of disservice. So I've always been really honest. I'm always very blunt. Do I know how to simmer that down? Absolutely. When I go in certain environments. But if I'm on my social media, if I'm on my page and it's my business, I'm going to say what I want to say. And so that's really where my reputation, I think, came from, is that people knew that they were always going to get the real, whether they were in corporate or they were an entrepreneurial leader. And, I just give real feedback for real results.
For reals. We'll say that. Because like literally if you guys go there to her Instagram, you can check out some past ones. Like I said, whether you're, in corporate or you're an entrepreneur, always so much amazing things. Another stance you talk about it, you don't do free events. Nice in the entrepreneurial world, especially online business, people say, I have a free workshop or a free event. How'd you figure out? Someone said no more code switching. Yeah, no more code switching.
I do not code switch, inclling hair.
Yeah, we ain't doing that, William.
Yeah. I don't code switch with anything. I mean, yeah, absolutely not.
I mean, at a certain point in time, if I gotta think about being someone else the whole time, how am I gonna have time to think about working? Like I have no time to do my job.
I feel like my clients wouldn't get the results that they get if I had to constantly code switch. I think about the level of work I was able to do in corporate versus the level of work that I'm able to do now. And it's wildly different. Number one, I have more control. But number two, me being a person that looks like me and also being a woman, there's a lot of code switching that happens. And it is hard to have to think about that all day long, right? In everything that you do. And so absolutely not, William. No code switching. This is all what you're going to get. Now, mine is cursing, right? Like sometimes people curse, but I don't curse, like that. But anyway,
let's get into code switching a little bit. And I say this because I know code switching from my perspective, Black perspective, woman perspective, but it's like I don't know if it's like a morphing Power Ranger. It's like people, especially in the online space, I feel like there's a lot of morphing of personalities to be a certain place, because if a coach or a mentor says act this way, they don't take the game, they actually mimic what they see. It's like, versus like you hear like, find your bold style, whatever. They try to be that person. So I also feel like there's code switching, but also like personality displacement. People be doing that when they get into like, I was in corporate, I'm gonna be this person. It's like, what is this like, I guess, confusion of like showing up a different way to get the money when the money comes when you're yourself?
Whew, you know what? I think some of that just has to do with the environment, right? I think for so long, ooh, this is deep, right? Because it's not just about race.
Mm-hmm.
I think because some of it has to do with culture or religion, all of the diversity that exists. For the longest time, everything was so sterile, right? You think about even the idea, the real idea of the amount of entrepreneurial leaders we have now. This thing has just become acceptable that people could be entrepreneurs outside of having really big companies, right? That they could be entrepreneurs and be self-sufficient on a real level. You even think about buying a house as an entrepreneur. You have to go through so much mayhem, right? Because they want to have all this proof that you can actually do what you need to do. And so speaking to it from that perspective, there's always been a very big gray area as to what was professional and what's not, right? How do you should say it this way versus that way because someone said that that was right. Someone says if you roll your R's too much, someone might be offended, right? Someone said that if you have a small lisp, someone would think that you're inadequate or you don't know how to communicate. Someone said that if you didn't talk fast enough or loud enough, that you were timid. It's all based on things that really did not account for diversity. And that's what we're starting to see now with a lot of these bigger companies and the leaders in the board of directors really starting to think, we really need to start thinking about the diversity in our companies. It's not just to appease different racial initiatives that's going on. They realize that a lot of the need for diversity and understanding what's going on exists just in the mere fact that people still code switch. You're telling me I got to talk this certain way to be deemed appropriate. I got to act this way to get the promotion, right? I got to dress this way. Sports, the biggest example. Most of the time when they hire an anchor or something like that, always super young, right? Always a certain type of gal, right? Always a certain type of man. Code switching. Now you're starting to see diversity, not just in skin color, but in the way that they talk, where they're from, the way that they dress. We're seeing diversity at a new level. And that's really what it comes down to. It's not even really just as simple as code switching, just as simple as people changing. It's because it's been mandated for a long time. And now people are figuring out, you know what? That really doesn't change the trajectory of our business. And it's really not going to stop how much money we can make.
Amen. Like I'm all day, every day about that. That's why I have my business. I want to make diverse leaders in like all aspects. Like there shouldn't just be one. Like I told this story the other day, or I wrote about this. Like I remember working at State Farm, and they talk about how they flew in some trainer to train us on some stuff. It was a chick with a butterfly tat on her face, and I was just like, my mind was blown because I'm like before, and I'm like, so I thought it was gonna be a dude in a suit. But apparently this chick was so good. They're like, you got to come out and train these people. So it's like, that blew my mind. So I'm like, why can't, I'm not saying everyone should get a tattoo on their face unless they want one, but it's like, why can't we have more opportunities for people to express themselves and still lead? Yeah. And so, you know what I'm saying? So it was like, in this dream, I was like, all right there. I've
experienced things just like we had this company last year reach out to me. They were referred to me by someone and I remember, end quote, they said to me that they decided to go with another consultant because at the time I didn't have, it was a web presence, right? So basically they're looking for like this really grandiose website. That wasn't a concern to me, right? And it didn't become a concern to me until the end of last year when we know that we have other initiatives coming up in 2022, right? Web presence means a little bit of something for us, more on data than anything else. And what was really interesting is that was the only thing that made them go with that person. I quote that, right? Same company comes back this year, and now the price is 2 times. Because the person you went with, right, you get what I mean? It's like because you're not prepared. A website doesn't mean that a person's qualified. People get scammed more on the internet than anywhere else. So if you're relying on the internet, I mean, like these are the types of things where it's like we really start thinking about it. If you're relying on the internet to tell you about a person, and that's what you're going to utilize, it's not always the truth, right? So, and then, we can go on and on about that.
Yeah, but I think, and turning, look at diversity in national government. It's like, it's everywhere. I mean, we need more and I mean, honestly, as a former diversity inclusion director, I will say diversity where the money at. When people start realizing the money's there, I think there'll be a lot more interest. I think people are seeing it as more of a compliance thing now. And I guess we said, like, it's multiple dimensions. It's not just one level. It's like all aspects. If people can't be their true selves at work, you got a big issue there, because they're spending all their brain power trying to be somebody else and doing the darn work they've been assigned to. So that's the issue.
I mean, you think about like, the whole thing, I think between like, what was it like between like Wendy's and Chick-fil-A, or like Chick-fil-A and Popeyes, and like on social media during the time of like the whole chicken sandwich and food sandwiches, this or that. None of their Twitters were technically politically or professionally correct, but they made so much money and expanded in promo during that period of time, right? It's things like that where people are really starting to realize that, you know what, like we really need to kind of like step back. And why does everything have to be so polished? Why does everything have to be so perfect and correct in a certain way? Wendy's, I think, probably made the most out of that, in a sense of like, no one's really was thinking about Wendy's, I don't think, but thinking about that piece, that's huge. If we stop trying to be so perfect and holding people into these boxes, these caged birds, essentially, what could that do for your business? My last job, if they had just let me loose, man, they'd be in a world of a different place. I think about that. The job before that, if they had just let me loose and I didn't have to fight through the code switching, and I didn't have a leader who was not only another female, but also just very blatantly disrespectful and didn't understand diversity and cultural differences, I wonder how much more I could have served them, how much better off they would have been. We have to start thinking like that.
I mean, dude, Danielle says, perfect use of my 30 minutes, take a break from work time. I'm so glad you checked in, Danielle. That's really, really nice. I told you, every time she talked, she dropped gems. I will, something I was getting into, but that was a beautiful conversation, so I wanted to. But like, and we could talk on both sides, but entrepreneurship side, it's like not doing free work. But even people in corporate, if you want to start getting into entrepreneurship, you don't have to do things for free. Like, I guess it's like, let's disrupt this mindset that we have to pay our dues, or that we have to do things for free in order to actually get the value that we deserve.
Listen, I mean, I don't know what else to say other than, like, just stop. I think that there are too many people that aren't in a position to be doing things for free. Right? It was like people were willing. So many people, they'll be in corporate and they're willing to lose their job if their paycheck is $10 short. But they'll get out here into business for themselves and on these apps, and they'll do all the things for free. They won't ask for a dime. And a lot of them can't afford that. So my advice to that is, I tell everybody, you have to charge something. Even if you don't have the confidence in you to charge $10,000, $20,000, charge something. I don't care if it's 100. Don't do a lot of things for free, because we want, again, we have higher expectations of other people than we do of ourselves. So you're upset at your job because your paycheck was $10 short, but you're not mad at yourself for speaking for an hour for someone in an event that they were getting paid for free. Where is the integrity in the standards, right? That's the only thing I can say to that, is start charging. Understand who you are. Understand what it is that you bring to the table. Because once a person asks and requests you to do something, you're in the position of power, not the other way around. Mm-hmm.
Well, you heard it first. Just stop. She said, just stop, y'all. Don't even waste your time doing none of that kind of stuff. It doesn't make any sense. Something that I ask all my guests here about, and I'm really excited to hear this from you, is about legacy. Like I always think about life and death because I know for me, I really want to leave with a legacy, and I like to always ask my guests and my friends, like, what do you want to be known for, and what's the legacy that you're building?
Whew, man, I want to be known for actually getting people to act and walk in leadership instead of just being called leaders. I really want to leave a legacy of people feeling powerful enough, intelligent enough, and confident enough to walk in their leadership and not simply just title themselves as a leader. Believe in the fact that they were born to influence and that everywhere they go, every decision they make, every person they interact with, and everything that they don't act on leaves a legacy. Legacy doesn't start when you make a bunch of money or when you get to that next goal. It starts from the second that you determine that you have something to offer the world. And that's what I want to leave a legacy of. We're not just talking about being leaders, we're not just calling ourselves that. We're actually walking in it and impacting with it.
I love that. I love that legacy, and I feel like everyone who listens to you talk feels that. We can feel that you really want that for us and for the world. That's amazing. Oh, Attorney Kwan said, "Wow, that is a lesson for me. I need to value my services more." You already impacted multiple lives on this live stream, let alone in general. And so I want to ask, like, if anybody wants to work with you, how can they learn more about you? In the description, I do have a link to your website, but if people are interested in learning more about Tomasha and want to engage with you, how can they do that? And where can they go to engage with you?
Yeah, so the best way to engage with me, definitely, if you're on LinkedIn, which is where we are, I would encourage you to send me a direct message. So we are undergoing a complete makeover on the website, which I'm super excited about. We'll have that up in like a month. I just got the date the other day. But if you're interested in working with me, I'd encourage you to just send me a direct message here, and let's talk more about what you and or your organization and micro leadership team are looking for, and what it is exactly that you're struggling with, and let me know how we can potentially be of service. And then if you're following me, you're really out there in the social media world, feel free to come over to Instagram. A lot of my efforts there are targeted towards entrepreneurial leaders. And it's definitely a free for all there. So we're definitely not primed and polished, but you have a good time. And yeah, so either you can send me a direct message here. We can definitely chat more about working with you and your organization and your management team, or your leadership team. And then also come on over to Instagram at Tomasha Super.
There we go. And yeah, Tomasha, you have been awesome to listen to. That is for sure. I mean, that's the thing. And then for those interested in me, if you are having a challenge, branding yourself, public speaking, and networking easily so that you can actually be a sought after leader in your industry, in your space, and be that go-to expert, holler at me. Just go to my website. It's at the link in the description, djwright.com/contact, because I'm happy to help you because we want more leaders out there who are visible and seeing for the full value. Tomasha, it's been great. Do you have any last words to the audience before we say goodbye and, have the rest of our day?
Yeah, let's go out here and make some shake, y'all. Definitely want to be powerful leaders. Go out here and influence somebody. I'm sure I influenced you today. If you're still watching, you definitely have been influenced. And so I just ask you to think about every single day, what type of influence are you leading? And if you aren't influencing, you're wasting. So let's not waste.
Let's not waste. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, guys. We're going to say goodbye and see you next week on Become an Industry Celebrity. Bye.
Bye.